Hey, everybody. Welcome to a new week of the Brain Warriors Way podcast. We are diving deeply into the dragons from the past. In my new book, Your Brain is Always Listening, we have talked about the abandoned, invisible, and insignificant dragons. My primary dragon. We also talked about the inferior and flawed dragon that is driving the epidemic of teenage suicide. And today we're going to talk about the most common dragon of all of them. It's the anxious,
especially right now,
dragon that is breathing fire on your emotional brain. And it's always been the most common dragon. I think as humans.
But right now they're having babies, like lots and lots of babies. Because right now 2020 was just epic for the little anxious dragons.
Oh, no question. Well, they
had a baby boom.
At home, they had more time.
For a baby boom.
And the anxious dragon is born whenever you felt the world was dangerous. Mm-hmm. And so anxiety is actually written in our genetic code, because as humans, when we evolved, it was during a time of scarcity. And when, as a species, we're not strong. We're actually pretty weak as a species.
We're just smart.
But we're smart. But part of being smart is having enough anxiety that you save for the future, that you don't go up against lion directly, that you get a herd and then you develop tools and then
walls and
protection. So, but for your life, the anxious dragon, if that's one of your dragons, you can actually find out your dragons. We have a new questionnaire online, knowyourdragons.com. It's when you felt afraid, if your childhood was scary, like I was beaten up virtually every day of my life until I was 7. And so it was scary. If your childhood was unpredictable, you certainly know about this.
Scary, unpredictable.
Felt the world was dangerous. One of your early memories is your uncle being murdered in a drug deal.
Yeah, my first 3 memories, almost drowning, being left alone and having no idea where an adult was when I was 2.5, and my uncle being murdered. First 3 memories I can remember.
Or if you had undependable or unpredictable caregivers, and you actually had a babysitter that was pretty abusive.
I had 2 that were very abusive, but I can remember. I mean, best case scenario was I remember a couple that were just didn't really pay attention and care. That was much better. But I had 2 that were abusive.
And when you were 9, we'll talk about how this dragon reacts, but you actually had a panic disorder.
Which I never knew. When you told me that, I was like, really? I mean, I think some people don't even realize it. When, like you told me I had ADD, I didn't believe that either. But I think when we learn to live with these behaviors and these things that go on in our lives and these patterns. And I think when people don't know, it's like you finally put a name to it. It's like, oh, now I can do something about it. But I didn't even realize that's what was happening,
And so what triggers this to breathe fire on you, pandemic will certainly do it, societal disruption, the political divide, but it's really any reminders of past fears and anxieties. And so if, like, for example, I talked in the book, and I never talked about it publicly. When I was young, I used to wet my bed, and every morning I woke up
panic,
because you just never knew. And
you had a bunch of siblings, and so that.
Oh, and no one else had this issue, and so I was special in that way. And I remember the urologist. So my mom tried to get me help, he basically said, make him drink a lot of water and then make him hold it.
Oh my gosh.
And it was torture. I still remember how upset that made me feel. I was just like chronically in pain. And so as a child psychiatrist, I'm actually really good at treating enuresis or bedwetting. And it's a little hormone you give people called DDAVP that helps. And it's like, my goodness. But so anything that reminds you of, oh my goodness, somebody will find me out, that can drive anxiety. So what are your triggers? And how does it cause you to react? Panic attacks, fears, phobias, predicting the worst, nervousness, insomnia, headaches, trouble breathing, worrying about being safe. And what we see on scans is their limbic or emotional brain works too hard. It's like it gets reset. So we call it limbic hyperactivity. And the treatment is to calm it down. And you can do it with diaphragmatic breathing. I teach my patients 3 seconds in, 6 seconds out. If you take twice as long to breathe out as you breathe in, it'll actually trigger a parasympathetic or relaxation response. I mean, it's like super simple. Just do that 10 times. It's actually one of the things I do a lot that just sort of settles things down.
Right.
Meditation, which you do a lot and you find it incredibly helpful. Hypnosis. It's why I gravitated toward hypnosis when I was a young psychiatrist. I took a month elective in it, and I just always felt calmer.
Yeah. And you actually did scans and studies on people praying and meditating. I think of them very similarly. But you've done studies on them, and it actually does settle down the emotional brain.
And it activates the thoughtful brain, which is sort of like the perfect balancing act. Now, with all the dragons, there are good things about the anxious dragon. If you have low levels of anxiety, you actually die early from accidents and preventable illnesses. I was talking yesterday about the movie Free Solo, who is this guy that climbed Half Dome.
Oh, yeah.
And his anxiety center, the amygdala, he had no activity there.
Oh, interesting.
So he had no fear.
Oh, interesting.
Which is why I could do that. For me, not in your lifetime am I going to climb the flat face of Half Dome in Yosemite.
See, the funny thing is I have a lot of anxiety over certain things, especially childhood triggers from things that felt unsafe to me. And it's part of what, whenever I feel that anxiety, I want to challenge myself to do it to get over the fear. So, I mean, anxiety can drive you to do those things too. It's like, no, I need to overcome this fear.
Well, one of my patients, actually the opening story in Your Brain Is Always Listening, Jimmy, his father was the leader of the Mexican mafia, and he had this term, test your mettle.
Right.
Test.
And that's kind of me. Like, I don't want it to rule me. So it's like, I want to challenge it. I know that there are a lot of people who do that.
For each of the dragons, you can also use your 5 senses to calm your limbic hyperactivity. So whether it's music to settle things down, lavender as your sense of smell, massage, nature images, and nutmeg of all things helps to decrease anxiety. The movies the anxious dragons like, well, they hate horror movies.
I despise horror movies. My mother used to take me to see horror movies when I was like a little kid. I still to this day, why would you take a 9-year-old to see Hills Have Eyes? Especially when I already had a panic disorder. So to this day, I despise.
They tend to love funny, uplifting movies like Mrs. Doubtfire, Big, Chef, I love Chef, or the Disney movie Pollyanna.
Oh my gosh. If I have to watch Pollyanna one more time, everyone in the house has boycotted Pollyanna.
You have to do it. If you're new to my family,
yeah, but you don't need to watch it over and over and over.
And then the affirmations to say, if you have the anxious dragon: I am safe, I am secure, I am calm, I am protected, I focus on my breathing and centering myself. So odds are during COVID, you have the anxious dragon.
So one thing I tell myself when I don't feel those things is, I've got this. I've got this. It's like, okay, I've got this. You know, so so it's one of the reasons I take Chloe out and we do like survival training where you like sleep out in the wilderness and build your own shelter and stuff like that, because it scares me. Right. So because it's like, this happened. What if I ever had to do this? What if, you know, like I always have these thoughts in my head and I'm afraid of sleeping out in the wilderness. So I myself do that. And it's like the whole time I couldn't do well. And I'm like, okay, I've got this. You've got this. I just keep telling myself that. And
yeah, no, I did that in the Army for 10 years. I'm not
but I didn't have Army with me. It was just flowing.
All right. What did you learn? Do you have the anxious dragon? Write it down. Post it on any of your social media sites. And I really love if you would pre-order, if you're listening to this after the book is out, March 2nd, copy of Your Brain is Always Listening. If you go to yourbrainisAlwaysListening.com and you pre-order the book, you can actually download some really great gifts, including a coupon for a free bottle of Happy Saffron. Stay with us.
Your brain is always listening. I am thrilled to be your guide and show you how to tame your dragons so that you can have the happiness, peace, and the relationships you deserve.
Welcome back. We are talking about dragons, and Your Brain is Always Listening. I love this book. I think the dragons are so much fun. We're going to talk about the wounded dragon today. But before we do, I want to read a review. So this is from Family Therapist Unplugged by Quincy Rose. This podcast has transformed not only me personally, but also my outlook on my mental health and physical disability, which has therefore revolutionized my practice as a family therapist. I've realized that I can help many people view their insecurities as a strength if I can actually view my own most crippling insecurity as a strength. I've had 3 traumatic brain injuries before the age of 19, which has led to focus impairments as well as challenges walking. The Amen's approach to understanding the function of every change or difference in our brain and body is what started the process of viewing myself and the world differently. I love that. And I don't like the word disability, just FYI. I like other abled, because we've got Natalie, who is our social media coordinator, and she's a quadriplegic. She was injured in a skiing accident when she was 15. And I think of her as anything but disabled. That girl, I think she could take over the world. So I do not think of her as disabled.
She actually is taking over the world.
Right. I know. So let's change that word to other abled if we could.
Well, so in Your Brain is Always Listening, dearly love if you pre-ordered the book, bought it as a gift. It's a great gift to help people know their dragons. You can go to yourbrainisAlwaysListening.com. And you can find out your dragons at knowyourdragons.com. The dragons are going to be a big part of this podcast going forward. Today, we're going to talk about another very common dragon. It's called the wounded dragon.
Hold it up closer. Yeah, he's cute. He's sad, though. He's like hurt.
And the wounded dragon is the trauma dragon. Its origins are if you experienced trauma, physical, emotional, or sexual abuse, intense stress, such as being in a fire, flood, being assaulted, being in an earthquake. I was in 2 earthquakes, being bullied, being teased, being picked on. That often is the origin. And I know you've had a couple of traumatic incidences, from the assault when you were 15, where you were attacked by a guy in a suit on the way to school who sexually assaulted you, your stepfather who did his best to sexually molest you, and growing up with that intense stress is traumatic.
You know, there's something about this word trauma, and I didn't think about, I mean, I knew for myself, I hated the word trauma. It's like traumatized. Like, I'm not, like, that word is so dramatic. Like, I'm not traumatized. And I couldn't really acknowledge it for the longest time. And I realized that a lot of people who follow us and leave me comments feel the same way. It's like, ugh, that word is so dramatic. But really what trauma means, I love the definition I found. One of the definitions is it's really just any extreme situation that makes you feel like the world is unsafe. It ruins your trust in the world or in people. It sort of shakes you to the core and it makes you feel like you just can't trust. And it causes these repetitive thoughts, you know, of always looking for what's wrong, paying attention, causes anxiety. So that's really what trauma is. So if we could just like get past this idea of, oh, I was traumatized, because it makes you feel like a victim.
Well, and it's not the same as being a victim.
Right.
I mean, you were.
So being victimized is different for me than being a victim. I do not think of myself as a victim.
Well, you don't have to own it.
Right.
Right. Too many people own being a victim.
Right.
And
being victimized does not mean you need to live your life in
35 years ago, I wrote a course called The Sabotage Factor about all the ways we sabotage ourselves from getting what we want in life. And the number one hallmark of the sabotage factor was blaming other people for how your life is turning out. And blame is just not helpful to see yourself as a victim. But yet, a lot of us have experienced intense, prolonged trauma.
Right.
And what triggers this dragon is any past reminder. It can be smells, sights, sounds, anniversaries. Like my dad died in May last year. He and I used to work out every Sunday. And so every Sunday I think about him and I get sad. Now we'll talk more about the grief and loss dragon in a couple of weeks, but it's anything that reminds us. And growing up when I was a teenager, I love Cat Stevens. He's just one of my favorite musical
We're doing
artists.
this again.
And whenever I play him, if Tana's in earshot, I get in the shower and put him on, and she comes in the bathroom, she turns him off, yells at me.
No, because you know, there are certain songs I cannot listen to.
Right, but I was by myself. And you just.
But sometimes you do it just to see, like, I know he does it just to get the reaction. He wants to see if he can. You're trying to like give me shock therapy or something, get me through it, because I don't hear the music with certain songs. I relive the memories. And so I hear the memories of what happened many years ago. And it's just like nails on a chalkboard.
Right. Because what was a good time for me was a
terrible time
for you.
Right.
So how do people react when the wounded dragon breathes fire on their emotional brain? They can relive the trauma, just like you said. They can have flashbacks, nightmares, feel numb, avoid situations or music that reminds them of the event. They can startle easily, feel that their future is shortened, and just start watching for bad things happen. Now, what's the upside of having the wounded dragon? Well, you end up with a book like yours, The Relentless Courage of a Scared Child, that has a lot of great reviews. I mean, none of my books have 4.9 out of 5-star reviews. And you can develop something that we call post-traumatic growth, where you have spiritual changes. Your life mean something more to you. You see new possibilities. You appreciate life more. You begin to relate to others in a more meaningful way. And it really, I think for you, I love this, kickstart greatness, right? When you embrace it, when you talk about it. When we first met, you weren't talking about any of this.
I thought it was all nonsense, psychobabble. Don't talk to me about this. Keep the facade up, keep the mask up, work in a trauma unit, deal with blood and guts, and no walkie-talkies. Like, we're not doing this. Why are you laughing like that?
Okay.
You kept wanting to talk about it. I'm like, nope.
But you kept coming back. That's all I can say. So in taming the wounded dragon, think about post-traumatic growth. How has that trauma made your life better? EMDR, very specific treatment for trauma that stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. They're bridging where I have you bring up the thoughts and feelings around the trauma and then take you back to the first time that happened, just to begin to clean it up so you're not thinking like a 4-year-old, that you're thinking like an adult who is soothing the 4-year-old. There's a technique called havening that we have talked about that you can learn more about. I think journaling the story of the event, and that's what you did in The Relentless Courage of a Scared Child. And that was
not just journaling,
you, right?
but actually interviewing people and making sure I had the details right. And the interesting thing was watching my family actually fight over it. That was fun. Because all of them had different, recollections of how it happened. It was so interesting to see.
You do not have to be your past. You can tame the wounded dragon and take the best part of it, move beyond.
So one thing I love about this, after I've done all of these, like everything you just said, and I love them all. Once I started this journey, you started calling me a seeker, because once I opened the door, I'm like, all right, I'm a very intense person. So once I opened the door,
I don't think they've noticed
a little bit. So once I opened that door, I'm like, we're doing it. If we're doing it, we're doing it all. And so like, I don't do small baby steps. I tend to jump canyons. So I'm like, I'm going to do everything. I'm going to do everything I can get my hands on. And we're going to like just dive headfirst into all of this once I opened it. So one thing that I really love though, I like this idea of post-traumatic growth, because I would not go back and change it if I could. And that's an interesting thing to be able to say now. Because at one time in my life, I would have told you, oh my God, if I could just go back and change it all. I would not go back and change it. I would not want to be cured, but to be whole, to be fixed, to be mended, that's different. Because now I feel like I've got so much more depth, history, each one of those breaks, each one of those mends, each one of those, repairs makes me a stronger person, makes me a more whole person.
Makes you who you are.
Makes me who I am, makes me more able to help other people.
And for the most part, you like who you are.
And so for everyone listening,
I like who you are.
Right. And so for everyone listening, it's like, would you really change it? Or do you just want to be healed? Do you want to be whole again?
So what kind of movies does The Wounded Dragon like? Healing movies, like Good Will Hunting.
It's great.
Or A Beautiful Mind. Lion King. I love Lion King. Ray, about Ray Charles, and As Good as It Gets.
Yep.
And the meditations for the wounded dragon, or I am safe in this moment. I have everything I need in this moment. That was then, this is now. I release trauma, turmoil, and grief. Asking for help is a sign of strength. Asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness. So that's The Wounded Dragon. Your brain is always listening. You can get it, get all sorts of wonderful gifts, including 6 hypnosis audios with it. a special event for 2 hours where I answer questions from just people who pre-ordered the book on March 17th. So if you're listening to it afterwards, I'm sorry. But also a coupon for a free bottle of Happy Saffron. We are just have already given away hundreds of bottles of Happy Saffron, which is one of my favorite supplements. Your brain is always listening.com. Stay with us.
At Amen Clinics, we're creating a revolution in psychiatry. All other medical specialists look at the organ they treat before they treat it, but most psychiatrists never look and end up guessing based on whatever symptoms you tell them. But how do you know unless you look? Brain SPECT imaging gives us a new way to look at your brain to understand and treat your symptoms so you can ultimately know what is going on and feel better.
Welcome back. Today, we're going to talk about another one of my dragons, the should and shaming dragons. You're listening to the Brain Warriors Way podcast. We are doing this multiple week series on my new book, Your Brain is Always Listening. Dearly loved. If you ordered it, give it away to 10 of your friends. They'll love it. It's practical. It's fun. It really allows you to spend, like if you did a year of therapy with me, what would be the big lessons you would learn? And the first thing we do is identify your dragons. So we are grateful you're with us. You have a review.
I have a review before we get started. A note of appreciation to Dr. Amen and to all of you for the very kind, caring, and compassionate work that you do every single day. May we all continue to work together to change the conversation, methods, and models for understanding mental health and neurological wellness in our nation and all over the world. Thank you so very much. That's from Junie F. Awesome.
Well, awesome. So today we're going to talk about the should and shaming dragon. I know this dragon really well. And, you know, I think if you grow up Catholic, like I did, or Jewish, or Asian, or there's Russian, you know, that many people use this dragon to manipulate.
But most parents, even especially parents who have already like sort of suffered themselves and figured out how to stop suffering or gone through trauma. Like I know even as a parent, I have to leash this dragon all the time because I want to spare my daughter the pain that I've been through. Right. One of the things that really helped me with this dragon was love and logic parenting, because when this dragon starts to get out of control and I want to tell my daughter, you should, it's like I have to remind myself, should she really? Like she needs to figure this out.
You're shooting all over her?
Shooting all over her. And that program really helped me.
So the origin of this dragon is if you're raised in a shame-based culture, where if you don't do a certain thing, people tell you you're going to hell. I mean, the whole eternal damnation.
Like you when you were 7?
Yeah, no, I was 6 or 7 and I told a lie. At least my mom said I told a lie. I actually have no recollection of this. But what I do recall is her starting to cry and then saying, I never thought I would have a son who's going to hell. Imagine what that does to the psyche of a 6 or 7-year-old child. It's not good. The origin of this dragon is past humiliation. If you've been embarrassed or belittled, judged, or criticized by yourself or by other people. And this dragon is triggered. In fact, let me show you this dragon. He is super cute for those of you watching.
I know, I love the graphics. The dragons are so cute.
It's triggered by disapproval from someone important, such as a spouse, a boss,
or a
coworker, or a parent, even if you're 52 and your mother disapproves of you. Or you have perceived disapproval from a higher power. And the reactions are feeling guilt, foolish, distressed, exposed, wanting to hide or withdraw, overly sensitive. And I've certainly been sensitive over the years. Overly submissive. That's definitely not your problem.
But the shaming dragon, up until I decided to get help, we talked about the wounded dragon. The shaming dragon, the shouldn't shaming dragon, I think ruled my life up until I decided to actually get help for the wounded dragon. So because as long as I was hiding from all of those things, those wounds, I didn't want to deal with those wounds. The shame that goes along with so much stuff, even stuff that you don't have control over as a child. There's so much shame around some of those thoughts and feelings. It just will paralyze you. It's so many people feel paralyzed by this one.
Well, and this dragon can lead to self-harming behaviors, addictions, pornography, overeating, cutting, eating disorders. And it really provides the seeds for anxiety, depression, and obsessive thinking. Now, there are upsides to all of these dragons. And the upside to the shouldn't shaming dragon is there are things you should do. And there are things you should be ashamed of if you do.
Right. So discernment. So we can use it for discernment.
Is important. Society does need rules. Parents should take care of their children, and you shouldn't hurt people. So it's really the balance. Of course, there are things that you shouldn't do. The idea is trying to motivate behavior with guilt is generally just not helpful. And so, as you said, using discernment on, does my behavior get me what I want?
And that goes to something deeper, which you're going to end up talking about later, which is values. Making sure your values are in alignment.
Values are so critical. In the book, Finding the Upside, of course, there are things you shouldn't do. Morality is essential for the greater good. That's why we have rules and laws. Shame and guilt can be helpful if their emotions serve your life goals, but they can hurt you if they make you feel bad, small, or disconnected from others. Shame can motivate learning, growth, and desire to change, to be better. One of the strategies that I love, I think it's one of the most important strategies I give my patients, is replace I should in your head with I want to.
Right. This is going to get me what I want.
Or it fits my goals to, and see if it still fits. Like I would get the thought I should go see my dad, or now I should go see my mom. And whenever you try to motivate behavior with guilt, it makes you feel bad. And so you don't go visit your dad, or you don't go visit your mom. But when I replaced I should with I want to, or it fits my goals to, then I would go see them because I both wanted to and it fit my goals to. So know when guilt is helpful and when it's not. Behavior's way more complicated than people think. See your young self, love and compassion. And I think therapy really helps with that. How would a loving parent treat him or her? And then talk to someone about the shame you feel. Hiding from it expands it.
Yes.
Facing it takes away its power. Movies for the should and shaming dragon. There are movies that poke fun at tradition, like MASH, one of my favorite movies ever, or Meet the Parents, or The Help.
I love The Help. That was a great movie.
And the affirmations to say or meditate on every day for the should and shaming dragons is each day I feel more at peace with my mistakes. I work to learn the lessons of my past. I can and will let go of any shame that haunts me. I replace, I should do this with, does it fit my overall goals to do this? That was then. This is now. So do you have some of the should and shaming dragons? Very important to tame this dragon.
That was one of the, that dragon is probably one of the cornerstones of my book. Just when you hold it in, when you try like putting on a facade, try not to let anybody see, there's so much shame, but that just makes the shame build and build and build until you just, the weight is so heavy.
Yeah, makes me think of the phrase, the shame that binds you. And it's just so true. So what did you learn today? Write it down, post it on any of your social media sites, hashtag Brain Warriors Way podcast, also hashtag Your Brain Is Always Listening. You can go to yourbrainisалwayslistening.com. If you pre-order the book or order the book, you can download some very special gifts we have for you. Stay with us.
Welcome back. We are fully engaged with the dragons. Today, we're going to talk about the special, spoiled, and entitled dragons. Boy, do we see a lot of this just in society these days. And I'm super interested in talking about this. But before we do, please let us know what you have learned at the end of this. Take a screenshot, tag us. We love to answer questions. This is really important to us. We would love if you would leave us a review. You can go to brainwarriorswaypodcast.com or you can leave a review on Apple or Stitcher or wherever you listen from, whatever platform.
And we would be so grateful, and we'll try not to act special, spoiled, or entitled. This is a very common dragon, and people don't ever want to admit that they have this dragon. But it lives in a lot of us, and it causes such stress.
And there's a myth. There's this myth that it's relegated only to certain socioeconomic statuses. Not true. This pervades pretty much. It crosses all races, socioeconomics. It's really more about your attitude, about what you deserve in life and who owes you.
So the origin of the special, spoiled, or entitled dragon is if you were the golden child. Mm-hmm. Say your parents couldn't have children and you're an IVF baby, in vitro fertilization.
And you grow up always hearing about how you were a miracle.
If you're a miracle baby, if, your parents... And I know for you actually tried to have Chloe for a while.
Yeah. I thought I couldn't have kids.
You thought, and then you could. And so they become so special. If you're the oldest, if you're the youngest.
And let's be clear. It's okay to make your kids feel super special as long as you also don't make them think that as long as they also learn responsibility and like the world doesn't owe them something. Right.
Well, and the favored child.
I'm Middle Eastern, so I'm just going to say it. We see this a lot in our culture. I certainly saw it in my family.
Well, and I did too. given I was the second son, my older brother, the oldest boy, was clearly the golden child.
Right.
And
so my mom was actually the opposite of favored. She was totally not special because she was the only girl.
Which is interesting because she worked.
She was the one who worked the hardest.
And I was totally not special. And I am probably the hardest worker.
Right. So my mother, it was so interesting. My grandmother she was constantly putting her down, which I thought was super interesting. My mother not only worked the hardest, she is by far, not even by a little, the most successful, even though she started with the least. And all she ever heard, I remember growing up always hearing, you not like the boys, I mean, she was just constantly coming down on her for not being like the boys. She was mad at her for not finding a man to take care of her. She couldn't do anything right. It was very interesting.
The pop stars I've seen, because
the idol
people
worship.
Treated them as if they were special.
Idol worship.
And so, not all of them, some of them I've seen have just been amazing. But they just wouldn't show up for their appointment, or they'd show up 4 hours late and expect you to just drop everything and still see them. So what triggers this dragon? When you don't get your way, when others try to make you take responsibility, when you don't feel as though you are not treated as special.
Mm-hmm. Now I have a couple of family members that fall into this, and it has nothing to do with socioeconomics. Let me tell you, it has to do with you. The world owes me, and you should be taking care of me, just because. So. And
yeah, you wonder where
because I exist
that came from. They try to deflect responsibility.
Yeah, zero responsibility.
And so, how this dragon causes you to react is you have low empathy. You're not thinking about things from the other person's point of view. Other people don't matter. And so it's easy to cut them off. Tantrums, rudeness, needing attention, a sense of injustice, outrage. You owe me.
You know who I'm thinking about.
I deserve. It's their fault.
Right.
This dragon causes all sorts of trouble. There's not much upside on this dragon.
Because you can scream those things all day long, and the only person that it hurts is you. So you might feel like they owe you, the world owes you, it's their fault. Guess what? It's not hurting them, it's hurting you.
What I wrote in the book is feeling special and having a cheering section can help your self-esteem, as long as you don't get a big head.
As long as you balance
and use it against other people.
As long as you balance it with responsibility.
Yeah.
Sometimes personal ownership.
And sometimes I have this dragon. It's like, well, I'm special. And, I've done all of these really cool things. So what I've really had to tame it. So if somebody asks me to speak at a big event, I want to be humble and not go,
you don't live there.
You should treat me better.
No, I would not live well with someone like that. You do not live there. I would not live well with someone like that. You may have those thoughts, but you do not behave that way. You do not live your life that way. Because we would not be together if you did.
So how do you tame this dragon? If you recognize some of yourself, take responsibility. Mm-hmm. And I always love what you taught me. Responsibility is not about blame. It's just about your ability to respond in the situation.
And take ownership.
Work to promote the success of others. And, that's what good leaders do. They don't have to go, me. I did this, I did that. If you're like that, that usually means you're struggling with the abandoned, invisible, or insignificant dragon. But promoting the success of others helps to tame this
I think
dragon.
That's a sign of maturity as well. Because I think a lot of times we have that, when I certainly did when I was younger. But then once we sort of grasp this idea that a rising tide floats all boats, it's like when my team does better, I do better. When my kids do better, I do better. If my parents do better, you start to think a rising tide floats all boats if you can change that paradigm a little bit.
Catch yourself justifying your spoiled actions, like your tantrums, and ask, what can I do to make this better? Your marriage will be so much better. Your relationships at work will be so much better if you just go, what is it I can do this better? I do an exercise with the kids and parents I see and the couples I see. And that is, I often start with, what do you do that makes your wife angry? Or what do you do that makes your mother crazy? And nothing. And I know they're lying to me. And when I get them to think about what you do that makes the situation worse, then I go, what do you do that makes it better? Just to show them, teach them, you have a place. I mean, I clearly could make you very
if you acted like that, quickly. You could.
And I can I know, because I've been in detention for 50 years, and that gives me a sense of power.
Right.
Can I get what I want by acting in a certain way? And what I want is good. I want to have a kind, caring, loving, supportive, passionate relationship with you. And when I feel powerful, when I feel like, well, I can make it better or I can make it worse, but I choose to make it better, that helps us.
Yeah. One thing I learned, I love this from our friend Joseph McClendon. It's like, rather than using statements like, this just happened to me, they did this to me, switch it around, look in the mirror and go, what is my opportunity here? What's the opportunity for me to do something? You instantly now have taken control of it. You're empowered.
The movies, the special, spoiled, and entitled dragons like Cruel Intentions, The Wolf of Wall Street, Devil Loves Prada, 10 Things I Hate About You, Mean Girls, The OC, Beverly Hills Housewives, Housewives of Beverly Hills. I can't stand that show. Housewives really of any city. Affirmations to calm the special, spoiled, or entitled dragons. I am special, but so is everyone else around me. I am responsible for my own happiness. I encourage the success of others. I see things from other person's point of view. Acting spoiled spoils my own happiness and joy.
Oh boy. I was just thinking, I wonder if I've given our daughter Chloe a complex, because you remember when she was little and she'd come in, it's not fair. And she'd do the whole, storming in, and I would look at her and go, life's not fair. I don't know whoever told you life was going to be fair. Fair is a place with bad food and farm animals. What are you going to do to make it better? I probably gave her one of these dragons by doing that.
Which one?
Yeah, probably.
Well, but she has to be very careful not to be the special, spoiled, and entitled dragon, because
she's growing up.
She's your only child,
and she has a very charmed life. So we do have to be careful with that. So I've always tried to put the responsibility back on her. And
she's growing up to be a wonderful human being.
But it just occurred to me.
But this dragon can pop its head up periodically.
Oh yeah, but with all of us, it can.
So what did you learn? Write it down. Post it on any of your social media sites. I would dearly love if you got a copy of Your Brain Is Always Listening. You can go to Your Brain Is Always Listening. It'll teach you, how to order the book, and then how you can download the gifts we have for you. And this book makes a great gift that it'll just benefit so many people. You can also find out what your dragons are by go to knowyourdragons.com. Stay with us.
If you're enjoying the Brain Warriors Way podcast, please don't forget to subscribe so you'll always know when there's a new episode. And while you're at it, feel free to give us a review or 5-star rating, as that helps others find the podcast.
If you're interested in coming to Amen Clinics, use the code podcast10 to get a 10% discount on a full evaluation at amenclinics.com. For more information, give us a call at 855-978-1363.